Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. We've got some huge changes on the way with northwest flow returning in the middle of summer. If you take a look at the overall temperature anomalies over the next 5 days, we still have that dominant ridge of high pressure that's really been kind of locked over a good part of the western regions and the Pacific Northwest. But everything's different across the central and eastern two-thirds with the complements of that northwest flow type setup, and that brings in some of the cooler anomalies and more unsettled weather conditions. And I think that is going to be extended as we get deeper into the weekend, especially into early next week. If we take a look at the overall 500 millibar, you can actually see it a little bit better with that 594 ridge of high pressure pretty much extending for a good part of the southwest and much of the west coast. But you can see the significant trough that's really building across the good part of the upper Midwest, those areas across the central plains, and eventually that cooler anomalies will actually sneak all the way down into the deep south and bringing unusually cooler like weather, at least 5 to 10 degrees below average for those areas further south. So if we take a look at the overall satellite picture this morning, we still are dealing with some scattered showers and thunderstorms out ahead of that secondary push of cooler air. And then we also have some more showers and thunderstorms are likely going to be forming in the heat of the afternoon. Those areas across South Dakota, again, back into Nebraska, those could get pretty bumpy as we head into later on this afternoon into early evening, and predominantly be a major wind event across a good part of Nebraska as well as into Kansas. If you can take a look at the overall radar depiction, what it may look like as we get into, once we hit into peak heating this afternoon, once we get into that 6, possibly 7 o'clock time frame, we're going to be seeing numerous showers and thunderstorms likely bubble up across a good part of the southeastern regions. But those storms across the middle of the country, especially the ones in Nebraska, those other areas of in eastern Colorado into Kansas, those are likely going to be pretty significant later on this afternoon as big time wind producers and some larger hail. And so right now the Storm Prediction Center does in fact have that upgraded enhanced risk for severe storms. The main risk is going to be big time wind producers, and some of those, especially in that hatched area, could approach 80 miles an hour later on this afternoon. So we have those storms igniting this morning across Rapid City back into the Sioux Falls region. Those will extend and intensify as we get into later on this afternoon into the North Platte region, back into Hastings, into Goodland, all the way into Dodge City, as those will travel southbound, bringing those extensive high winds, straight line winds, some downburst, microburst winds likely. Not really kind of a tornado setup with this particular setup, but you could definitely see some larger hail mixed into that atmosphere. But especially the main risk is going to be just the high winds are going to be coming out of that region and probably approaching some of those 80-mile-per-hour range, especially as we get closer to that 6-7 o'clock time frame. So if we look at it over the next 24 hours, you can almost see kind of the ribs likely kind of take shape. That is those mesoscale convective systems that'll be diving southeast bound, extending those winds with those kind of bow echo segments at times, originating to those areas into South Dakota, back into Wyoming, but really starting to amplify as you get further into eastern Colorado, but especially those areas into Nebraska and into western portions of Kansas, as well as into western Oklahoma and into the Texas Panhandle into the overnight time frame, as those will continue to dive southeast bound. So over the next 24 hours, here's where the rain showers will likely be. So you have this kind of sea breeze action out ahead of that secondary push of cooler air that puts you in the warm sector for those areas into Louisiana, back into Mississippi, as well as into Alabama, into Georgia, into the Carolinas, and as well as into Florida. I'm not really expecting any severe type activity with this particular association, but these are the ones that we're going to have to be concerned about for severe storms, likely wind, and some larger hail associated with those mesoscale convective systems. And as we go into going into that, Saturday time frame, we still have that isolated showers and thunderstorms that kind of bubble up in the heat of the afternoon, and then we'll also have again out ahead of that secondary cooler push, putting the storm placement a little bit further south and eastbound. So now those areas into Oklahoma, further south into the Texas Panhandle, areas into New Mexico, you're going to be under the gun for some of those higher wind producers as those continue to dive south-southeast. And as the ridge of high pressure continues to kind of back up across the west coast, that will just allow that trough to deepen a little bit further and allow that cooler push of air to extend from Canada all the way down into the deep south. Kind of rare to see something like this time of year, and especially over an extended time frame with actually multiple cool fronts coming in with reinforcing shots of cooler air, putting overall that 7-day temperature anomalies, a good 5 to 10 degrees below average. So anytime you can, as we, especially in the middle of July and, heading into some of the hottest temperatures of the year for summer, it's always nice to see northwest flow and some cooler anomalies, at least even at 5 to 10%, even a 5 to 10 degree, temperature drop makes a huge difference in what you would, typically feel like with, widespread 100 degrees pretty much, just on a daily basis. But replace of that is going to be that northwest flow and more of that unsettled weather conditions. And obviously that brings rain showers back into the pictures where it has been fairly dry further south as of late. So those areas back into North Texas, getting into Central Texas, those will increase the rain showers as we head into Sunday, Monday, as well as into Tuesday timeframe, with that cool front reaching all the way down into Central Texas as well as into the southeast by then. And it'll kind of stall across these regions, creating that overrunning type setup that will keep the instability alive, especially with the northwest flow, the more unsettled weather conditions. So that just produces more opportunities for showers and thunderstorms, and actually much needed rain across a good part of this region. Sunday, Monday, even going into Tuesday, you can see the temperature anomalies as we get into that time frame really extends that cooler anomalies well to the south over a good part of Oklahoma and Arkansas, as well as into Texas and Louisiana. Actually, based on average, you're going to have some of the cooler anomalies into the country by the time we head into Tuesday time frame with that cooler push of air. And again, that continues to remain unsettled across that region as the cooler push of northwest flow, the ridge of high pressure is still going to be locked over a good part of the west. For those areas into Idaho and Montana, much of the desert southwest, you will miss out on this cooler air. But for those areas across the central, the south, and the eastern 2/3 of the U.S., you're not going to miss out. You're going to feel it in a big way in comparison to what you would typically feel like for that third week of July. So, but going into Wednesday, again, we're kind of in that same type setup. The northwest flow continues to remain unsettled. And with that stalled frontal boundary, that will keep the showers and thunderstorms alive for deep South Texas, getting into the southeast, and now we're talking areas across the east coast, getting into portions of the northeast as that front will be more or less stalled across this region. And there's the overall rainfall over the next 5 days. So likely between now and Wednesday morning, yes, we put all that instability, especially where those areas we are going to be seeing that stalled frontal boundary, that will increase the rain amounts and likely extending to those 1 to 3 inch totals for a good part of this region, heading into that Wednesday time frame. And then even going into Thursday, it continues to remain on the below average side as high temperatures, even on on Thursday, as can't even actually even find 100-degree on the map other than the desert Southwest. Yes, for those areas across the West in Montana, 98 degrees back into the West Coast, but you can see much of the central U.S. and the eastern 2/3, we've got widespread 80s and 70s. So that's going to be feeling really nice, especially as we head into that middle part of summer. And even going into Friday, we are going to be seeing a little bit of a change, but nonetheless, it's still going to be that northwest flow with the ridge of high pressure still dominating for a good part of the West. And that extension of that cooler anomalies will keep the flow alive and actually keep the more unsettled weather alive, even going into, Friday, even going into next weekend. We see some respite of a pullback with the ridging high pressure starting to extend for those areas further north, but the cooler air will still stay alive for a good part of the south and southeast as they continue to remain unsettled really for all week long over the next 7 days. And if we break it down for you on the European ensemble guidance, kind of hints at that, right? So predominantly with that ridge of high pressure pretty much locked and loaded across a good part of the western regions, that will keep those temperatures high and dry for those areas. But yes, for those areas across the central and eastern 2/3 and that northwest flow continue to remain on the below average side for the next 7 days. And the GFS ensembles pretty much imply kind of the same thing. So again, we've got both global ensemble guidances hinting at that northwest flow with a series of cool shots continuing with that northwest flow, pulling those cooler anomalies for that central and eastern 2/3 and continue to remain unsettled for them. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update while I protect you before and after the storm.